Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome to Nightlight, everybody. Thanks so much for sharing your time with us. We look forward to sharing ours with you. I want to thank Ken Quiethawk for his amazing intro. Please check him out on the internet. He's a native storyteller, and he and his wife, Deb, have preserved that amazing tradition and preserved history and time and cosmologies in a very unusual and unique way. So I definitely urge you to check him out. I have a very special lady on with me tonight. I have Gloria Amendola with me. I've had her on before, and I have had the pleasure of reading 5 of her books. So you can tell I really respect and admire her for the work that she has done. Her travels have taken her to sacred sites worldwide to experience the powerful landscape temples firsthand, and they have changed her from the inside out. She's a modern-day Templar in the OSMTH Order. Her commandery is in Rennes le Chateau, France, and is dedicated to Marie Madeleine, which is a perfect fit for her. She follows in the footsteps of the enigmatic Knights Templar, walking where they walked, gathering impressions from the traces they left behind. She's learned that where they walked, so too walked the ancient ones. Initiates of the mysteries have gathered in these sacred sites worldwide for reasons we are now just beginning to understand. And they left us an extraordinary legacy, one that could be decoded when we were ready to comprehend its truth. And thankfully, for many, that time has come. She's fascinated by the revelations of the ancient ones that the ancient ones have seeded in her dreams and imprinted in her cellular memory, all the while waiting for her to awaken to this vast repository of knowledge and healing energy within. She's listened to the whispers of the ancient ones along the way, and sometimes it was a struggle to accept their arcane teachings. They were so different from anything she had known before, or so she thought. Yet, in her eventual awakening and acceptance of these coded teachings, she discovered a whole new world of possibilities. Her work is a reflection of those possibilities and of the complexity of the Grail quest into the extraordinary vessel of wisdom she calls the Well of Memories. You can find her at www.gloria-amendola.com. It's an amazing website. Please do check it out. But wait till after the show. So welcome to the show, Gloria. So glad to have you on again.
Oh, thanks, Barb. It's nice to be here, especially at this time.
Oh, yeah. No, it's amazing. I have found of late that there is so much more fascination in the Mary mysteries, in the Venus histories, the goddess worship. I mean, it's been the last couple of years have been we've been flooded with wonderful information on all of this material, and I think it wakes up within all of us a new power that is, and a curiosity, hopefully. I know your books, I loved your books because you not only, they're great stories, but they also teach and entertain. And I have found over time that when you're teaching something in a story context, people remember it, and it sort of makes them curious to look for more. And certainly, I think that's happening. Aren't you reissuing one of your series?
Yes, actually, I'm reissuing Mary Magdalene, Revelations from a First Century Avatar, which tell her story in her words. And for your listeners, it's channeled material, and then I write a couple of chapters in the 3 different volumes. So it's a compilation of both. But it's interesting because every time I tried to write a new volume, once I realized multiple volumes were coming, Magdalene would always, in spirit, say to me, no, you're not ready. You need to shift your consciousness even more to understand what I'm about to give you, what I'm about to say. So I worked with that instruction with her. So she was teaching me as she delivered this information. And as I just reread Volume 1, because that's now laid out to go to publication, and now we're on to Volume 2, even though I channeled this material, there were things in there that were over my head at the time. The first one was 2013, that I'm just beginning to understand now. And she said, no, there will be no shortcut to this process. You need to read each page carefully, making sure there's no typos, but reacquainting yourself with this information. So what I found happening as I was doing that in preparing them, I had questions myself, things that I felt needed to be answered. So I haven't said this before, but there probably, in addition to other books, there probably will be a Volume 4 to come shortly thereafter once the first 3 are available again. And yes, people are really writing me all the time, please re-release this material. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, I have found that when you initially released them, there wasn't a lot of material out there about Mary or her preaching or her story or how she grew up and how she was trained, and now people are starting to not only accept it but take it as almost a given, which I think is fascinating. There have been so many books out there that play her down, and it's a pleasure to see her taking her place where she belongs.
I totally agree, and I guess we just weren't ready until now to understand the ancient feminine wisdom. We're coming out of a deep patriarchy in the cycles of time, and we're coming out of an incredible brainwashing through the Piscean Age in particular with major religions, and they don't tend to favor women in any way, and I think we've had enough. I think that's run its course, and especially those who are embodied as women this time around, we're like, well, what about us? I mean, we're here, we have a voice, we have a history. And so for me, my individual walk with the Magdalene has been 20 years now, and I mean, I'm still learning and putting pieces together day by day because the story was just so buried.
Oh yeah, and I think what fascinated me was her training and how she came to be the yin to Jesus' yang, literally.
Yeah.
And together they created a powerful message and story. And of course, when the church decided to become the church with Constantine, suddenly they were shoving any female magic to the background and downplaying it, and it's a shame because it gives you a message that is profound, but it's not balanced. And so if all you're doing is living your life according to half the message, then you're not getting the full power that is there if you listen to her message as well.
Oh, I totally agree. And, if you read some of the Gnostic texts with Jesus and him making allegory and story with the masculine and the feminine energies, to me it reflects probably his training in India in the Hindu system, but I'm sure it reflects many systems. But he understood that feminine current of energy within him, and he also understood the balance of the two and how when you go through the process of alchemy and initiation, which is really what his and her story is about, is going through the process of initiation, then you realize that the feminine and masculine current comes together and creates an even newer state of consciousness.
Oh, absolutely. And what I found interesting was the fact that, he respected her so, and even in the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi library, they talk about how, they complained that he loved her better than the others. And, so many people are getting used to the fact that he most probably was married to Mary. But they still keep her in a very, kind of in the shadows. And the reality is, if you stop and think about it, Jesus wouldn't have respected anybody that wasn't his equal intellectually.
Yeah.
So that in order for that pairing to have really worked or been as successful as it was, she had to have the same kind of charisma that he did. And not only that, but for her to continue the ministry after his journey on the cross, and beyond his death, when that happened later on. I mean, she was a powerful, important person, and even though she did sort of, I still don't think we have her whole story.
No, I think that she said some really fascinating things in the trilogy. There is one alternate text. I think it's the Acts of Philip. I actually haven't looked at it in quite a while, but there's a story in there about how she's traveling to teach with, I believe it's Bartholomew, and, I should have this committed to memory. It must have been Philip, Bartholomew, and Magdalene. And they go to this one town where they must be teaching in some way. And the Roman official at that time, his wife, was quite taken by her and her way, her energy, her teachings. And she let her husband know. And, of course, back then there was a lot of apprehension and skepticism around what they would consider sorcerers and magicians. And so that's what her husband thought, and they locked them all up. And so when I think they stripped one of the two, if not both of them, I think one they stripped, one they hung upside down like the hanged man in the tarot. And when they came to Magdalene, it says in the text that she became like an arc of glass, full of light, and it so scared them they all ran away. So I think she must have used her power, her light body, some understanding of ancient energy, Merkaba teachings, whatever it could have been. But it's written in there, and it talks about that power that she exuded, so much so that it scared them. They ran away. So whatever she was doing, she was considered a master in her time.
Oh, yeah. And one thing I want to kind of put across to those people that don't have a lot of expertise in this particular area. When we talk during that time frame of magic, we're not talking pulling bunnies out of hats. They use the term magic to apply to intuition, inspiration, energetic work. Their magic was what we would call metaphysical science today, and So that while they studied magic, they were studying a higher level of spirituality, actually. So, and the Magi, they were called magicians as well, but they were astrologers. So,
right.
You know, when the term is used, magic, it isn't referring to sleight of hand. It's referring to something completely different.
That's true, and in the trilogy, Magdalene also talks about high magic, and to me it goes back to ancient Egypt, but it goes back to a culture even before then. So you're right, when they were working with, they were working more with alchemy, formulas, mathematics, the golden mean, the understanding of the sacredness, but not only the sacredness, the science of the heart. Certainly that was important in ancient Egypt. So when you're speaking about that, yes, they were working from a very high mind, at least in the mystery schools, until we got to the darker cycles of time, and then things began to degrade a little bit more, just like even the mystery schools began to degrade more, some of them. So, you know, when the cycles of time change, like we're about to hit one this year, then, you know, things change with it, just like experiencing this pandemic. I mean, that's a story in and of itself, and certainly Magdalene had a message right at the beginning that I'd love to share. But we believe that the Piscean age is falling away, and a couple of very good astrologers I know truly believe, and have for years now, that the winter solstice 2020 is the official doorway into the Aquarian age.
I would believe that. I know I spoke with one astrologer, and she used to come on the show on a monthly basis, and she had, when we were talking about predictions for 2020, she said, and she marked the day almost exactly. She said there was a conjunction around the 19th of March, during which the possibility of war breaking out would happen, and that's almost exactly when, you know, war was declared on this virus. So, you know, here I'm thinking atomic bombs, and of course it was the worst kind of bomb, I think, anyhow, than an atomic bomb. But I find it fascinating that some of the old sciences, some of the old ways, can be used predictably to a certain point, and give us information as to energetically what's going to be taking place within our realities, and of course that energy will reflect differently for every person, because every person is in a different place. So I know you do a lot of channeled material, and I know you had mentioned that you had some interesting channeled material that you had gotten on what was coming in the future, and I would love if you would share it. That would be so cool.
I will. And astrologically speaking, that March aspect of the astrology is that Mars, Jupiter, Pluto, Capricorn bundle blowing things up, fear, difficult time during March 2020. The astrology is pretty solid for the next few years, and it is not easy astrology. It's huge planets, lots of karma. So we look at this March timeline, which definitely happened for sure. And the next one is the summer solstice, June 21st, 2020. That's, I think, an even bigger deal in that there's a 5-degree separation between Saturn and Jupiter. Now, those are big planets. They carry big influences. And it's just a huge deal what's going to be transpiring, I think, then, and then the winter solstice this year. Now, having said that, there's two pieces I'd like to bring in. One with Magdalene, and I'll start with her message, and then Michael, who we know as Archangel Michael. I'd like to weave in the two, if that's okay.
Oh, sure.
Okay. So this, you know, lots of times on my website I'll put a channeled message on there, and I dated this one for January 26th. And it starts out a little tough, but then it ends in, I think, just the right place. And so here we go. So this is Magdalene's voice, and as I'm channeling her, she says, It has never been easy at times of great change on your planet, for the ruling elite does not like its power in place upended. They need your enslaved mentality to provide their sustenance. I have spoken of this before. It is of their darkest desire to use the blood energy of humans to enact their rituals of oppression and fear. Yeshua and I walk this earth lovingly and knowingly seeding the grid points, the places of power, so that at this time you could also walk these places and gather to remember what we once knew, encountering as we did the same forces of darkness that wish to corrupt everything, from the sweet waters of our gracious mother to the minds of people everywhere. In this phase of your collective evolution, it is up to you to show each other what you have observed, what you have witnessed, and what you are willing to do to align the light of your souls to every flower, to every sunrise, and every person along your precious way. It is in the application of this mastery that you will find your way home. Do not despair as you step fully into the leap time. Much will change in the blink of an eye. Before I read, there's a little bit more, but before I read it, I find that absolutely profound in that she's talking about this game that's being played by the dark and how they encountered it as they were doing the energy work on the earth, working in these very powerful locations, and how we would be called to show what we have learned. And to me, that's like, I have sat in tears at times watching the coverage, not only of the medical profession and the first responders, but really brave people out there who are finding a way to feed so many children who don't have food. And things like that, restaurants, cooking for the healthcare workers and so forth. To me, those are the people that are really, on some level, showing an extraordinary level of mastery, of courage, of service, right?
Oh, yeah, and not only that, but in times like this is when you truly see the best of humanity, and the worst, unfortunately, but you see the best, and it's more of the best. I know about a week ago, I was sitting here. My station is in my kitchen dining room, and I've got a kitchen that overlooks a pond. So I'm in the woods, and it's a beautiful, peaceful setting. And it was after dark, and I had the window open, and I started to hear sirens, and it was the fire department. 5 fire engines and at least 6 or 7 police cars with their lights flashing and their sirens going were slowly working their way throughout the entire community. And I stood here and I watched it, and all I could think of was, they're letting me know I'm not alone, because I am alone here. I haven't, been out or seen anybody really for weeks now. And I stood here, and it was like it was reminding me that I wasn't going through this alone. And I didn't realize it, but I had tears streaming down my face. It was such a moving experience for me that these men would take this time to, and apparently they did a different section of the town each night for a week. It was just amazing. Wow.
I think this is Magdalene was letting us know, hey, there's something dark moving in your world, but there is also incredible light, and it's time for you to show what you have learned. And I am so blown away, like you, by so many people, and not just the acts of kindness, but really having an awareness and a compassion that we're all going through something really, really surreal and different. And just to have them letting you know that you're not alone. I mean, to me, that is extraordinary. If I can finish this Barbara, she says, know who you are from every cell of your being. Radiate that truth into the soil and the rocks, the waters that flow in streams and rivers, and into the realms of the unseen. It will not be in vain. You are being heard by the elemental forces, they who need a clear and concise clarion call from you now. They will come to assist you, for they have seen many cycles of time, and they are experienced in transmuting the dark forces. They are your ally. Use them wisely, and you will be astonished by the power the tiny ones can radiate in your world. We are supporting you from the invisible place along with the star ancestors. We wish for you to break this pattern of destruction that has been seeded in this world for thousands of years. You are strong, you are visionary, and you are ready.
Yeah, it's amazing because I think I don't believe there has ever been a time before where the entire world was quarantined, and basically that's what's happened.
Yeah.
But in a way, it is one of it gives every person the opportunity to go within, to spend time getting to know themselves, to work on themselves. We're being given a time to really embrace what's happening and learn, more about ourselves and how we want to relate to each other and the world and ourselves. And so it's I'll grant you it's being forced upon us, but I think it's important. And I understand there are businesses that are failing, there are people that are out of work, but all of that is going to be resolved, within the next, months, weeks, whatever. But use this time wisely. Use it as a gift in many ways to be able to spend time to learn to communicate not only with yourself but with the people around you. Or, this quarantine is in many ways an amazing gift to all of us, and if we use it accordingly, it can only benefit us in the long run.
I agree, and I think there's another aspect of this too, that in this particular channeling, and it'll lead right into the dream with Archangel Michael. Magdalene says, we are supporting you from the invisible place along with the star ancestors. And I believe that they are here, and some people might call them angels, archangels, extraterrestrials. They've gone by many different names. I'll call them the star ancestors. That feels like what the indigenous would call them. And oh boy, there's just a little piece. It's an aside, but I'd like to drop it in really quickly. I think you and I spoke when we spoke privately. I mentioned this last year. I took a group out to the American Southwest. Hadn't been out there in a while and had spent a lot of time in France and England, Scotland, Wales, that sort of thing. And so the American Southwest called again. And in relation to star ancestors, one of the highlights of the trip was going to the lands of the Hopi Indian in northeastern Arizona. And we had hired a guide and an artist to take us to where we could not go alone on their lands and to spend time with us. And I had spoken with her, and I said, there's questions that I have that I hope when we get out there that you will answer for me. I know that you know the answers, but will you share this knowledge? And she said, well, we'll just have to see. So we went out there, and we were in her gallery for a while. She was a wonderful woman, a wisdom keeper, the best kind, not really even realizing how much of a wisdom keeper she was. And I asked her, based on the knowledge of Gary David and the three Hopi mesas, there's first, second, and third, and they mirror on the ground the belt stars of Orion in the sky. So while people think that happens on the Giza Plateau with the Great Pyramid and the other pyramids, it happens very precisely for the three mesas in the Hopi lands in the American Southwest. So I asked her why that was and who was their creator god, Masao. And she said very plainly, nothing complicated about it, that we believe that our ancestors from the stars, Masao was that star ancestor, and we believe that they came from Orion, and hence their three mesas being aligned to the belt stars of Orion. And I said, so that means you're telling me that Masao, your great leader, your great teacher, the star ancestor, was an advanced extraterrestrial. And she looked at me and very simply said, yes, that's what we believe. And the great Kachina dances out there that are done represent the star beings coming and going from the portals of their lands in America, in the American Southwest. So I felt that was important to kind of get people to understand these different levels of the star ancestors that Magdalene is saying, hey, they're here, and they're here to help you. So if I can transition from that, I'd like to explain who I have been shown who Archangel Michael is, if that's okay.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So a couple of years ago, I was in France, and there's just a tiny bit of backstory here, which maybe will help listeners understand this a little bit more. I've always worked with the energies I've known as Archangel Michael. And when I was in France with someone working from that well of memories at Mount Bougarache in the first day, my job is to get that well stirred up, to get it moving and circulating, so that any past life memories in the land there, in those Cathar lands and Templar and Magdalene and so forth, that let it get stirred up, because that's the place you want to really remember. And so we were working on that process, and while she was journeying, I was just holding space as a practitioner. I was just holding safe space. And all of a sudden the winds kicked up, and it was Michael who came in. And he said, I think it's about time you see me more for who I am. And I said, okay, who are you? And he said, well, you can call me an angel if you want, but I'm really, an advanced being from another place. And I said, so like an extraterrestrial? He said, yes. So we worked with that, he and I, for a while, and I began to understand what it felt like to explore the soul record of a non-human in a more personal way, if that makes any sense at all. Yeah, I know you're intuitive, Barbara, and you work with this stuff. It felt different, like the human stories were different than the stories that came from Michael, because he truly was from a different place in a different set of experiences. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Okay. So I began to be comfortable with that, and there was contact a year later where he came in one night while I was sleeping, and I could literally see this all going on in my third eye, and there was a curious stone that was left here, and he was very tall, very slim, very tall, and I was getting acclimated. Okay, so cut to the chase. At the end of the holiday season this past year, that wind came up again one night. I had my bedroom window cracked, and just to let a little air in, because you know how it gets in the winter with the dry heat. And the wind rose up out of nowhere, and it woke me up out of a sound sleep, and I'm a pretty heavy sleeper. And I felt Michael's presence come into my house. And again, very tall. And I could literally see him fully formed in my third eye, almost with my physical eyes. Now, I was in a daze waking up, but he was there. And he said to me, I want you to pay attention. I'm going to put you back to sleep and give you a dream. And I'm thinking, okay, that's great. You're waking me up to put me back to sleep. Okay. So I got knocked right out. I was gone. And in the dream, this is what he gave me. And this was just before Magdalene's message. I'm walking in the halls of an urban hospital, like Yale New Haven Hospital in New Haven, Connecticut. And I'm walking around, and I see people in regular hospital floors. And, a minor thing, maybe somebody had some elective surgery or something, no big deal. And I'm walking, I'm turning the corner, walking down other floors and so forth, taking elevators up, elevators full of people, and getting off and walking. And then I was in an intensive care unit, walking by that area, and that felt a little different. And then I took the elevator back down, lots of people, everybody doing their business. Excuse me. And I went down this hallway, and there were administrative offices. And I thought, oh, everybody's, doing the business of a hospital. And all of a sudden I heard Michael's voice, and he said to me, "What do you see?" And I said, "Well, I see an urban city hospital and, business as usual." And he says, "What else? What about the people?" I said, "Well, they look normal. They look like people you would see in a hospital." And he said to me very abruptly, "But they're not. They're all infected." And that was it.
Wow. Well, I would say that was very prophetic.
It was. I mean, when I woke up, I had no idea what it meant. I really didn't. And I told a few of my friends, Magda, if you're listening, I told you and I told Sharon, because I knew it was important, but I had no clue, what it really meant. And then I got this message from Magdalene, and I thought, wow, something is really up. And then, of course, this virus and this pandemic and all the action around it, all the conspiracy theories, all the possibilities just blew wide open.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think what they found in California and in one other place, that now that they're able to test to see, who has had it and now has an immunity and stuff like that, they're finding that thousands of people had it and now have immunity and they didn't even know it. And of course there are lots of people that got very, very sick, but that it's been around a lot longer than they thought. And it reminds me, did you read Dan Brown's Inferno?
Yeah, a long time ago. Yep.
This whole thing reminds me of Dan Brown's Inferno, where a plague was let loose, or people didn't get sick, but what it did was it compromised people's ability to have children, and that in a way it was meant to cull the population without killing people outright. Well, of course it's doing that now, but what I'm going to be fascinated with is to see, not 9 months from now, because 9 months from now there's probably going to be a baby boom, but but a year from now it's going to be interesting to check out the birth rate to see if it's gone down or not, because I suspect we're going to find that the birth rate is going down all over the world. So,
well, that could very well be. I saw Dan Brown at Carnegie Hall in New York. I forget which book. What was it? Inferno, with the idea of population control and transhumanism. Yeah. Okay. Because I think that's when he came out with that one, and he talked about that a lot, and you could tell it really seemed to bother him or weigh heavy upon him. We have the Georgia Guidestones, right, in Georgia,
right.
And they talk about an ideal situation, and they talk about, I believe, the population on planet Earth in a more idyllic state would be 500 million, and we're at, 7 billion?
Yeah.
Give or take.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah. Those Georgia stones are... It's funny because when first they were erected, they were ignored, and now people are paying greater and greater attention to them, and they've gotten popularity in a lot of books that have recently come out, and I think it's interesting that they don't even know who it was that paid for it, and that they're just standing there waiting, which reminds me of Göbekli Tepe too. They're, that's just standing there waiting for us to understand what it truly means as well. So that I think you're right. I really believe we're coming into a time of ancient wisdoms becoming more and more a part of our lives. And understanding the teachings that have come down through time, not just through Magdalene and Yeshua, but before that. And what I've been getting with the channeling that I've been doing, what I've been getting is that we are focused just really on those things that have happened over the last 10 or 12,000 years, and our real history, the history that is starting to become awakened and functional within each and every one of us. That history, those mysteries, come from before the flood. They come from before
Absolutely.
the Absolutely.
And when you were talking about Göbekli Tepe, that's what I was thinking of, the different layers there and the different depictions and the different archaeoastronomy. And there is definitely a connection to the people of the serpent, which would be those ancient people prior to the flood. So whether they go by later names such as the Israelites, the Anasazi, the Naga, the dragon, what other ones are there? All connected of the serpent.
That's the thing that when I say to people, a lot of this stuff comes from before the flood, before, and they say, well, humans, and I say, I don't believe there were humans then. I think whoever was here was a different species. Now we may have a piece of them in us, but they weren't like us today, and their technology wasn't. And
right, and I think I think the thing that as we go back 2,000 years to the Jesus and Mary Magdalene story, the Essenes, and then go back further into ancient Egypt, and then keep going back further, I think that we find that those later traditions, let's say ancient Egypt, and then of the Essenes, and where the Essenes were, according to the Rosicrucian manuscripts, where the Essenes would have taken Yeshua to receive his training, he would have learned about the people of the serpent, the pre-flood people. And when we saw what were his miracles, are believed to be the types of abilities that the people of the serpent had, the pre-flood people. So somehow Jesus and Magdalene, in her giftedness through ancient Egypt and just natural abilities, I think the things that were attributed to them, more Jesus than her, in the outer stories, but in the inner stories, certainly Mother Mary, her, and other Essenes, were reflections of those fragments of memory come alive in them that reflected the abilities of the Tuatha, the Tuatha De Danann, right? The people of the serpent. That is a very deep and hidden knowledge that has been passed down throughout time without interruption, but it had to go so underground in the dark cycles of time because there was just no frequency, vibration, consciousness to be in vibrational coherence or alignment with that ability.
Well, I think also, the Denisovans, too, that energy was different, and I get the feeling here that one of the awakenings that we have to have as Homo sapiens is that we are not the top of the food chain, so to speak. That the top of the food chain was here and left, and that there are DNA, parts of our DNA come from those species and those cultures. We carry their memories, but being able to incorporate their philosophies and their wisdoms, we have to be open to understanding their wisdoms. And of course, with Jesus, he was preaching philosophy, but he was more preaching a way of life through parables and stuff like that. Mary was bringing the ancient wisdoms through. So that with the two of them, you have the entire package.
Exactly. Exactly. And there's a part in, I forget which volume of the trilogy it is, where the two of them are walking, and they hadn't seen each other in a long time, and they're catching up, and they're trying to figure out with each other, like, what do you know? Well, what do you know? Well, where did you train, and what are your abilities? And it's just kind of like a master-to-master, playful interaction. And in that, Yeshua creates from the blueprint of life, probably the Fibonacci sequence in some way. He creates a tree for Magdalene, and he does that through creating through the harmonic blueprint of life. He knew that, the whole 5- and 6-pointed star, and he would have learned that, God knows, India, Tibet, Egypt, Greece. I mean, he was everywhere. He was, very much involved with the Druids in the United Kingdom, in the British Isles, of course. Back then, his uncle was a tin trader in Cornwall, and he's a whole story. He was like a triple spy himself. He was a very learned and accomplished man. So he was showing that to Magdalene. And she was a little taken aback by that because her mother, in the channeled material she gave me, her mother said, that you are very gifted, but you must use your gifts in service of your people and the earth. And so she finds, as they're walking, a village with no water, just like when we were out in Hopi last July. There was no water anywhere. And she sits in a dry riverbed with these very fine clothes on. And she begins to teach from her mastery. And she brings the water up out of the ground and begins to fill the stream. And the stream flows to the village so the people would have water. And they both took great delight in each other's mastery. It's a very unusual passage. It's really extraordinary because it's their personal moment with each other, showing each other what they had learned, but also Magdalene saying, pay attention. These are the things that you can do, us, meaning us, that we can do. And there's more to it than that, and they should be pretty much ready by May 1st so people can read them for themselves and decide. But I believe that level of mastery will be required to resolve the problems we are now facing going forward.
Well, I think we're being stretched in an amazing way, and I talk about it often that we are all in one way or another looking for gnosis. We're looking for a way to, on a consciousness level, to link into the source of all creation. And, I talk to people about looking for the portal within, the bridge within, to go from consciousness to higher consciousness, to the spirit within that links you to the Creator. And the term that I kept hearing was, you have to all become bridge walkers. You have to find and create that bridge within you and be a bridge walker, to be able to go from the consciousness, the solidity of the physical, into the spirit realm where there is no physicality. So it's
well, I certainly feel with these connections that I've been having lately that the star ancestors, along with spirits from the unseen realms, along with people, the animal kingdom, the mineral, the plants, and so forth, the flowers, the water, everything, I believe that the consciousness is available to us. And I believe that there are star ancestors everywhere wanting to help. They've been very strong in my dream time, and I believe the reason why is because I'm still coming face to face with them. It is still a little. I still have some apprehension, and the benevolent beings that I feel that are around me, that I feel that are in our world. They know that, and they do try to mask themselves at times in ways that we will understand, especially in the dream time, so that it's a little more palatable to us to begin to understand. But make no mistake, they're here. And I guess the question is, I think a certain element of them have always been here, but if we are changing in the cycles of time, and if we are going to a higher vibration, a different octave, a different bandwidth, whatever the language is, I think that they come and they walk the earth again, like the people of the serpent were able to do. And I think locations like Göbekli Tepe memorialize that, and as we go deeper into our own journey, more and more layers of Göbekli Tepe are understood, and other sites as well, because we're ready to begin to allow our DNA to vibrate with that and wake up. It's like it's dormant in us, and it's waking up.
Well, I think that especially in some of the really ancient sites where they had those triple spirals, to me, that's the past saying, go within. That's where you find the answer. Go within. That's where you find the answer. And to me, this is, first of all, I believe the whole planet is quarantined on the spiritual level. I think that in many ways we are being prevented from really reaching out and touching into some of the beings, some of the societies, some of the, there's a universe out there that we aren't ready to become a part of because of our ways, because of our consciousness. And I do believe that something like we're going through right now is a way of reminding us of all of the wisdom and all of the magic that we have inside of us. And all we have to do is wake it up and then use it and live it, and life changes. It becomes, we go from black and white to technicolor. We have a richer life because of how we are perceiving our reality. And
I totally agree with that. Magdalene has even told me there are colors that you will experience when this shift happens that are like nothing you've ever seen before. So I've been using the word bandwidth a lot lately because it just seems to, express what I'm feeling right now. This broader range. Some people call it we're shifting from a half light spectrum or a fallen light spectrum to a full light spectrum, and some people see that as Melchizedek. But it would make sense that if we're going to this fuller light spectrum in this brighter cycle of time, that all the things that are being exposed in our world as dark, as difficult, as heinous, are because the light is even brighter now, so the dark looks even worse.
But,
or it just looks so obvious to us now.
That old saying, I don't know where it comes from, but that nothing is put before you that you aren't capable of getting through and over and beyond. And I believe that. And so it's kind of make lemonade from the lemons. And I don't mean that tritely. I do believe that we are going to discover a lot of amazing stuff within ourselves and those around us during this time frame. Even more so than when we had the harmonic convergence and stuff like this. This is a time in which we are being stretched so that we can find more within ourselves. And it's not something I think there are lots of people that have sought this kind of stretching on their own, but I feel that there is a time clock ticking, and humanity is now being forced to do something that a lot of people in the past did it on their own, and they got to a certain level, and that's great, but they're now going beyond it. So I think that this is a time of growth and stretching, and there's downloading that's happening to a lot of people that is really profound. It's a very exciting time. Everybody should be journaling as far as I'm concerned. I yell.
Oh, my God, it is an exciting time, but it's also, at the same time, it's a very trying time. It's a very challenging time. Many people are suffering. If you look at any of the coverage on TV and you see the incredible food lines of people in San Antonio, I mean really across the country, who are just lined up to get the meals that people are providing for them. And all these kids in all these school systems across the country who are getting their main nutritional sustenance at school and not at home. I mean, to me it's exposing levels of poverty we don't want to face in this country. You know, things that are so imbalanced, the income inequality is just extreme. It's extreme. And I think it's so many things like that we have to face all at once. It's almost overwhelming. I know when I've gone to bed at night, when I go up to sleep, I'm knocked out and I can't even remember my dreams. In the last 2 weeks, I think I remembered one dream. I don't know if I'm processing, releasing, healing. I don't know, but I'm a pretty active dreamer, and I've just been knocked out by everything. And I've been doing my work for a long, long time. So I can imagine what some who are awakening a lot more at this time, you know, the kinds of emotions and things that they're grappling with. It must be crazy.
It is, but you know, it's growth, and when you know, it's. I think I do a prediction for every month on the website, and I think on the last one I said, you know, you have to understand that humanity is going through a birthing process, and for anyone who has ever birthed a child, it hurts, it stretches,
Yeah.
it hurts.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, really. Really.
And
there is pain. I mean, they say
we're
no
in
pain,
labor.
no. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, when I had my son, I was in labor 72 hours, and that was 72 hours I do not want to repeat. That's why he's the only child. But but I think we're basically going through that kind of a process, and if people understand that at the end of this time frame there is greater richness for all of us, it's easier to know that there truly is a light at the end of this tunnel, and we're going to be better for it.
Yeah, I believe that.
It's just it's amazing. You do a lot of workshops and travel a lot, and you know I definitely am impressed by the way that you jaunt across the country and the world. Do you have any workshops and stuff like that are scheduled for when we're set free?
Oh, that's a good question. I have a journey to England to work on the sacred sites or the power sites of the Michael and Mary line, kind of running from Avebury and Stonehenge all the way out to Cornwall and points in between. I'm hoping by Wednesday I will know for sure, is this going forward in June, because it's a really tight timeline. It's not just a journey to see these places, the mystical Avalon, the Arthurian legends, the Druids, and the ancient people that were there long before them, but it's also to teach people to understand what a ley line is and how a nodal point was used by the Templars, but again, going back to those ancient people of the serpent, the wise ones, the ancient ones, and how certain technologies were amplified on those ley lines, those very potent ley lines. So that's an aspect of it that you just don't get everywhere. It's just a passion of mine. So that's one of them. In this summer solstice it's a very huge deal astrologically, huge. So I'm hoping that we're clear to go for that. And then in the fall, which I believe we will be clear to go, we will go to Portugal and Spain to the Templar mysteries, which harken back to the goddess mysteries and what they were doing in those ancient lands. I mean, there's the whole Basque phenomenon there that feels very Atlantean to me. And then we'll head over to France to finish up there. I believe a tremendous light is coming in on the planet from the summer solstice it will come in waves through the winter solstice. And so those are the places I'd like to be, and if England doesn't comply in June, I will do it all in September, one after the other, because it must get done. Those places they'll be so rich and vibrant and full of energy and memory, and we as the initiates, we pick stuff up in these places. So that's one aspect of the work. That's the big stuff.
Will you be hitting the Orkney Islands too?
No, we did, as a group, we did Scotland in 2018, and we went as far, we started off in Edinburgh, went to Rosslyn, and then made our way to Iona and Mull, and then all the way up into the Highlands, and ended up at the Isle of Skye, which is extraordinary. But there's so much in Scotland. So our friend Mel from Australia, she stayed and went up into the Orkneys, but I did not.
Because Skara Brae is supposed to be quite profound.
Yeah, she went and she said it was extraordinary. She had such a pull to that place, and while the weather was very difficult, and we were there end of September, very beginning of October, it was very, very difficult, but it was very worth it to her. I've been on the Outer Hebrides to Callanish and those very powerful places, so that's really where my draw was. But Scotland, they say parts of Scotland are the original Atlantis that never went under the water, and after the journey we had there, I'm a believer in that.
Yeah,
especially the Isle of Skye. It's just extraordinary.
Well, there are.
And the Grail
Absolutely.
legends there are unbelievable, and the families and the stories of Yeshua, Jesus traveling into the Holy Land, Magdalene. It's even believed that Jesus' grandmother Anna, was actually of Celtic origin, in that some people place her connected to the Tuatha tribe and England, and others into the heartland of Scotland. So we visited where her family was said to be from, and it's just filled with Neolithic structures and stone circles. It's just extraordinary.
Now there are philosophies that after the crucifixion that Jesus did survive. I believe he survived, and that he did spend time in India as well, and they called him Isa there. And
well, the Rosicrucian teachings have the Essenes first bringing Yeshua, Jesus, Isa, to India. So they say that he was fully taught by the Essenes by the time he was 12, in that story that trickles down of him teaching the elders in the temple. That's a very interesting story from a Rosicrucian point of view, of how he moved through the temple and ending up with the temple priests and just blowing their minds in terms of his knowledge level. He was done by the time he was 12, and it's believed at that point that who is called the Great White Brotherhood had deposited his educational requirements with the Essenes, and the first place they took him to was India.
I know
so he was there
Nicholas. Yeah, he was, and he Nicholas Roerich traveled through the Himalayas, and he hit at least one Tibetan temple where they had documents that showed that Jesus had visited there, that went back that far.
Oh, absolutely, because apparently when the young Jesus was in India, he got into trouble with the Brahmin, with the priesthood, because he wanted to share the teachings with the people. Now, mind you, he was a teenager, and he was extremely intelligent and extremely gifted, and he wanted to share those teachings, and it almost cost him his life. And so they had the Essenes, who were in charge of him, his guardians, had to get him out of Dodge. They had to get him out of India. And so the next place they brought him to study was Tibet.
It's magical, and if anybody has ever seen any of Nicholas Roerich's paintings, you can feel that there is the spiritual energetic there that is just so profound. It's unbelievable. There have been lately. I have been hearing, and I'm often fascinated by how things just seem to present themselves to me through different authors or different books, and I find that lately I have been hearing material and having authors that speak of stargates on the planet, and I'm fascinated with it because, of course, Star Trek, Stargates, all of that. I am definitely a science fiction junkie, but the element of the fact that there truly are and have been and continue to be stargates on the Earth plane, which is phenomenal. And one of the ones that I am very aware of are the ones in the Bosnian Pyramid.
Mhm.
So, are you aware of any others? I know they talk of the Newport Tower in, on the East Coast here. I know there's one in the Bosnian Pyramid, and I keep getting hints in dreams that there are other stargates on the planet, and that eventually they're going to be reactivated. So there's interdimensional travel. I think there already is interdimensional travel, but
yeah.
The stargates may well take us even further, but are you aware of any other ones?
I know that you're very fond of Rennes le Chateau because we've talked about that place before, that enigmatic, crazy place in southwest France. But, of course, I believe there's one in that area. And the energies that rise from the earth there, the telluric energies in Rennes le Chateau are like nothing I have ever experienced before. And so, if we go with the Hermetic principle and that whole 5- and 6-pointed star in the landscape as part of an initiatory, well, it's more than just an initiatory landscape. It has to do with living and it's complicated to explain it, but be that as it may, that is in the land, very measurable in southwest France. We know that from Henry Lincoln's work. But I also, when I was preparing for the Southwest last year and retracing my steps and looking around, I found that landscape is also in Sedona. So I think those are two very powerful places of stargates in our world, and I think they've both been, let's just say I believe the light and the dark is fighting for both of those. Because, it's not just a stargate, it's who has access to move through a stargate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it could be very, a lot of this has to do with consciousness. And I think a lot of people don't understand, and a level of consciousness has nothing to do with a level of intellect. So that there's and so many people have said to me, well, I'm very intelligent, so I must really have access to higher whatever, and that's not true. This is a whole nother area of wisdom teaching that comes when your spirit is ready for it and ready to embrace it and understand it, and it has nothing to do with level of school. It has nothing to do with anything like that. It has to do with your heart energy and maybe even your chakras come into this too a little bit. I would think so that it's not necessarily, all of the classes you've taken and all of the pieces of paper you've got. It's a matter of, are you practicing and living these tools that you've been given? You can.
Oh my God, that's so true. I've always found in groups that I facilitate, in circles, I've done over 300 Magdalene circles, and here in the United States, in France, in England, in Scotland. I mean, a lot of circles with people, and I find that there are people that are very learned who are very much in the ego mind, and that doesn't help you evolve. It just gives you a lot of knowledge, but not necessarily wisdom. And I find that sometimes those who haven't really studied the esoteric knowledge, the hidden wisdom, but have a great heart, they've got it. They've got it figured out. And it's the electromagnetic energy that the compassionate heart exudes that is actually part of the science of ancient Egypt. And that's why I find it fascinating when you look at some of the stories of the healthcare providers and those who are really out there in service in our world. It's all about the heart. And it's like they just know. They know from a place beyond that what they're doing, there's just a massive heart connection with these people. And what they're doing and the service that they're providing, to me, it's just extraordinary. It does reduce me to tears. But that's the power of the human heart.
Oh, gosh, yeah. And, I tell people, I can give you the tools. But what you're looking for cannot be taught, but it must be learned.
Yes.
And they just, often people will just look at me and say, that doesn't work, and it does, because when you embrace the truth, you become a part of it, and therefore you have learned it. But and
I think you have to experience things. I know when I first started researching Mary Magdalene in the year 2000, so now that's 20 years ago, I wanted to know everything. I picked up Susan Haskins. Oh, God, her book is so thick. It's unbelievable. And it's a lot of traditional research and that sort of thing. And I read it and read it and read it, and I wanted to know about these pilgrimages in France and Europe, and I wanted to know about the art history and all these very famous painters who painted these extraordinarily esoteric paintings with all these symbols, and I wanted to know about the Templars and the Cathars and on and on and on and on. And I said to Magdalene, I want to know everything. And she said, the only way I will show you the mysteries is if you learn forgiveness and unconditional love. And 20 years ago, I was aware of the concepts, and I tried here and there, but I didn't know what I know now. And she said, if you really want to, this is what you have to learn. She knew where I needed help, where I was just stuck. And I'll tell you, some very difficult situations presented themselves in my life, very difficult, and challenged me in that way. There was just no mistaking it. And once I got through those lessons and had to experience them in my personal life for myself, then I knew what it was to forgive someone who did me wrong, and to understand what unconditional love is, to express it. And that's what opened the door to the deeper mysteries. It wasn't, okay, study this for 5 years, go here, turn left, turn right, and there you are, the golden fleece. It was, a lot of really hard inner work to clear myself out of beliefs and emotions that were bogus, that no longer served me if I wanted to come to understand a bigger picture and experience.
And that's excuse me, and that's one of the other things that is so important, because when you're on this kind of a journey, you really have to unlearn a lot of stuff that's been programmed into you in order to move forward into the wisdom that is available to you.
Yeah.
And that's a tough step. That's a lot of people struggle with that. And it
when I was in the early years with researchers, and we were there from multiple countries, American, German, English, some from Poland. It was quite a multinational group, and I remember being part of this group, and we were looking for this and that and that and this, and, who was smarter than the next person, and who was blah, blah this and doing that. And I would sit back because my intuition was also activated, but nobody was interested. And this going years back, and even in that whole journey. And I kept studying the Grail, and I'm like, it's not just an outer path, it's an inner path too. And so I would sit back, and, sometimes they would tease me about my intuition, and they wouldn't embrace it, and it had to be hardcore research, and what author said this, and let's go measure that and map this out. And there's a place for that, don't get me wrong. But the intuitive skill set is part of what opens the right brain, connects us more holistically. And I remember watching people implode along the way because they got so deep into the intense energies, in particular in Southwest France, and the mysteries, that they literally lost their minds because they didn't have the balance of the inner work, of that balance of understanding emotion and how the ego mind works, and that whole interplay alchemically. So both must be done. And so that was a really profound experience to observe that. Not putting anyone down, just saying, hey, the Grail path is not just what we find in the outward journey, but it's what's revealed, not only what's revealed to us from our inner journey, what choices we make based on those revelations.
Oh, absolutely. And, there's currently, everybody's looking for the Templar treasure and the Ark of the Covenant, and Bill Mann wrote a book on the last refuge of the Knights Templar, and I had him on the show last week, and we got to talking about what is the real treasure, and the treasure was wisdom, was understanding, was love. I mean, there may be gold and silver, but it's the wisdom that is ready to be released when we are ready to listen to it. And just like I said in your introduction, it's kind of like a lot of the material has been hidden from us because we weren't ready for it. And
no.
It's sort of like, are we ready today? Well, we're readier than we've ever been before.
Well, I think, I just finished Bill Mann's, I've read lots of his books, and I just finished The Last Refuge yesterday. And I had read The 13th Pillar prior to that. And while I do believe it's wisdom, I also believe that it's ancient technology. And that comes from, the people of the Serpent, or those beings from the pre-flood era as well. And in Bill Mann's book, I don't know if you guys talked about this in his interview, but in the Albert Pike letters, of which he put some in the novel, he talks, when Pike is writing to the Canadian general, he talks about these traditions, and he references the Templars. Of course, they're referenced throughout the book, but he also mentions the Merovingian and Frankish kings, and he also mentions the people before the flood.
Yes, I know.
So Pike, he put that piece together, and, of course, the world wasn't ready for that then. But I will tell you this, and I don't talk about this much, but I will say this. In my channeling of the Founding Fathers, this is the new book that's coming. It's already being written. It's about my conversations with them. And it took me years, just like with Magdalene, to vet these voices to see, does this stuff hold up? And a lot of what was channeled to me in terms of Jefferson, Lewis and Clark, and more, was channeled to me many years ago. There are witnesses. These are archived. They were recorded, dated, and so forth, and they really hold up. And what I'm being told about the technology aspect of this treasure, because, again, I've always been around it, and I'm not interested in gold or silver per se. Yes, it is the wisdom, but it's also the consciousness to understand the ancient technology, at least in my opinion. And Jefferson seemed to be really, red hot in terms of that pulse. And he is telling me, and this is an exclusive, I don't talk about this much, that at this point, it is the women who must find this information and technology, because it's a heart-inspired process. So the heart fires the brain, and we know from heart math it does. right? We know from science now it does, and that it must be found, that it is out there, and it must be found, and it must be embodied by the women right now. Not that we want to be raging feminists and kick the guys out, but they need to step aside a bit and allow us who know how to work with the heart and the electromagnetic field of the heart to help move this world forward right now.
Well, I agree, and I think that when the atom bomb was created, that it was technology that we never should have had, and I think Einstein was horrified by it as well. So,
yeah.
And with a lot of new technology, the first thing that governments want to do is use whatever it is as a weapon, and I would hope that women wouldn't allow that to happen. I would love to see technology come forward that can be shared freely with everyone to benefit everyone, but not to be used as a weapon. And, perhaps women, would use it more wisely than men, because, everybody's got armies. Everybody is there's an arms race. There's even a technology race as far as space travel and all of that. But it doesn't feel like it's for the right reasons, and so I think that's why it isn't doing as well as it might have if we took the scientific information that's already been developed in this country that will cure cancer, that will cure a lot of things. We have the cures. I know they're there, and yet they're not being shared because of big pharma, and so it's sort of like I'm looking at all of this, and I would go along with that. I would think that women have a different balance in their energetics that would hopefully turn any kind of new innovations towards a more healing, loving, compassionate direction than trying to create a weapon that could, bend everyone else to our will, because that's not what humanity is supposed to do.
Well, that's true, and I'd like to clarify this for the male listeners in the audience that, a woman has supported a man in his career, for a long time, and we could go back into the history of all of that, but it's not just it's for the women to step forward now with that more integrated understanding and heart energy, and it's for the men who support the women to do that. That's really what the sacred masculine was about, was, helping to create a safe space and place so that the women could, through the different cycles, prophesy and have vision and do healing and so on and so forth. So this is what I'm being told, and I've actually had Jefferson share with me, and I'm writing about this, the prophecy of women. And interestingly enough, and I don't know if I've said this on your show, I may have, but it bears repeating. When I was walking by the water, I live down by the water here in Connecticut, and I was walking with my friend Sharon in 2016 before the election. And not to be political, this is just a message that came in. She talked about the extremes forming, and for me not to get worried about that tension was necessary to bring us to the next level, and it was like stretching a rubber band to the point of where you snap it. And she also said that there was tremendous I'm sorry. That's what she said. I was down in Mount Vernon. We were doing a group in Washington, D.C., in Mount Vernon, the Potomac, and all that. And George, my buddy George, who I channel, extraordinary voice of a very powerful and incredible man, he talked about how there was tremendous resistance behind the scenes for a woman to come to power at that time. And if you look at some of what happened in the election on both sides, it would seem to support that for whatever reason. Don't need to go there politically. But the reason I bring that up is because that was a choice point, and that woman did not rise to the presidency, But as you know, in Bill Mann's book, there's a little bit of a different story that happens. So I believe that women will break through and lead as they must at this time, but they must lead from the heart and the intelligence of the heart.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's fascinating because I think that we're coming to that time. I don't think it's going to necessarily be the next election, but I do feel that women are being included and are seeking roles of greater power in order to. I think my fear is the thing that bothers me so greatly is that, you know, once in that arena, you know, they say absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's very hard to keep your focus when all around you are shouting you should go other directions, just to be true to yourself and the people you represent, obviously. So I think there is a change coming. I think it's a major shift, and I think it's going to take us decades to get there. But again, it has to be a male-female combination in order for it to really work. Yeah.
Ultimately, it will. But this is why so many people are looking back on the hidden story of Mary Magdalene, and then the doors that opens to the old religions, to goddess teachings. What is that all about? Because when we understand where we've been and how we became so suppressed is how we break free from the well of memories that keeps us underwater, if you will, and we rise up from understanding our power, which connects to our emotion and the heart itself. It again, as much as it's compassion, it's an ancient science. I think the ancient Egyptians really understood this stuff. And here's where we find ourselves. And, you know, you think it might take time, but if we go back to this channeling that we began the show with, much will change in the blink of an eye. Look at how much, for better, for worse, for surrealism, for comedy, and everything in between, look at how much the entire planet has changed in like 2 months.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. Yeah.
So we may think it might take that long, but when she said, do not despair as you step fully into the leap time, we're leaping, and much will change in the blink of an eye, meaning what's going to happen in the astrology and even the astrological chart of the United States in the next, from now through 2022, is so big, astrologically, the influences are so big that it will force us to change and change quickly. And we can only hope that, because there will be changes made from fear, there'll be changes made from power grabs, the dark, and there'll be change made by people on a real grassroots level. And it's all gonna be in there, vying for its place. And we just have to hope that enough of the children of light are reborn from all traditions globally, which it is a global tradition and it is a global pandemic, so much so that we have strength in numbers and that the light will prevail. But, to think it's going to be an easy shift in this next year or two, it's going to be hard, it's difficult, but it will be worth it when we get to the other side.
Oh, absolutely. And you watch carefully and try not to get swept up in the energetics that are created by mob mentality, and try to quietly and carefully understand what's going on and being a part of it, but putting your energy into it. And I think the more people that really do the seeking inside of themselves and I think everybody is doing it to one way or another, and it is an amazing process to watch, to see these people that survived the virus and now are giving blood every 7 days because they have the antibodies in their blood and they want to help other people. I mean, it's beautiful. It's what humanity is supposed to be. It's I'm gonna help others out in any way I can, and the people all over the country that are making masks that because you can't buy them anymore, and they, the professionals need the good stuff. So, people are rallying, and it's just unbelievably beautiful. And I know my grandmother almost died of the very first one in 1918. I had the Hong Kong flu in 1968. And to come to this period of time and see the whole world being quarantined, it's really profound. And yes, people are suffering and people are passing over. But at the same time, the world is changing, and it has to change in order for all of us to be able to go to the next levels that we're all seeking out.
And isn't it extraordinary that during this time of a global pandemic that we actually have the technology in place while we're socially or physically distancing, that we can still be connected?
I think that's one of the amazing things. Technology has isolated all of us, so that we really have our technology, and we don't do group stuff that much. And yet, this last Easter, my cousin and I figured out how to do a family reunion on Zoom, and we had 12 people in our family on the screen talking to each other. This has never happened before. And
right.
we've all had the technology, but nobody thought to do it. And
right.
it was amazing because of the isolation we had. In a time of isolation, we were able to get together using this technology, and I know a lot of people are doing it. Kids are going to school on it, but families are reaching out and connecting. I have spoken to more of my relatives and close friends lately than I would have had not life been normal. And there's going to be a new normal, and hopefully we keep those connections. We keep that ability to unite energetically in any way we can. And
well, you know what I find interesting about this pandemic situation, and I don't know if interesting is even the right word, but different than, like when 9/11 happened, the world changed, and it was, a couple of events that happened on that day, and then the resulting reverberations in our world, and there were many. But there's something, and I'm not trying to minimize that in any way, but I'm just saying there's something about this pandemic, because I believe it will probably come back around, and if not this one, then another one. And I believe, in addition to the astrology, because I've seen it and it's pretty convincing, that this is going to be a sustained effort, as opposed to, it happens and then we recede and we try to figure out what really happened and the good and the bad and everything in between. But this one, I think, is going to keep hitting us in different ways for a while. And I think perhaps one of the reasons for that is that the pressure is not going to let up for a while, because there is no more normal. It is a new age upon us, and we must break free from the chains that have bound us in the ego mind for all this time. It's really been quite a game that's been played on the human psyche, let me tell you. And I did have a dream about this many years ago when I was studying with Robert Moss, and we worked out dream sequences in theater and all this crazy fun stuff to understand the depth of the dream time and the power of it. And I saw a time when people would wake up, and they would become very, very angry. And when the speaker rose in the great hall to say, hey, love is the answer, love is the answer, there got to a point, and don't misunderstand me here, I mean, love is it, it's a great thing, but they got to a point where their anger, because they woke up enough that the anger was too much to support the love in that moment, and they needed to know the answers. They needed to understand the lies that were told to them. because there was such anger. And I think we're going to hit that. I think as systems break down and things go deeper than they're going to go from where they are even tonight, that it's going to do that, because that's the deeper culling within ourselves that has to happen for us to truly shift into the Aquarian age. So it's a bumpy ride, and I don't say that to be negative, is more to be prepared, more to, hey, if you're out there and you want to figure out how to do your own inner work, like, now is the time to really go deep, because this Saturn, this influence of the big planets and Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter, this is big stuff. It's big karma, and it's coming our way. And, I mean, eventually that's what happens. It's just what happens. It's like the physics of the universe almost. And this is where we find ourselves. And I think that's what's going to be different about this time as opposed to other events that we've gone through, but then we've had some room to breathe. I don't think we're there anymore, because I think that the planet is in peril, people's immune systems are in peril, and we must do the work to make ourselves even stronger. Does that make any sense?
Oh, yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that what like I said, we're being given the time to do this work, and there are going to be those that don't, and there are going to be those that do, and it isn't, and those that don't will do it at a later date. Everybody does it in their own way, in their own time, but this is a major shift. There are major downloads coming to everyone. There is wisdom available to everyone. I would say that a lot of people are experiencing sleep pattern disturbance. They're experiencing the floaters in their eyes. They're experiencing possibly headaches and things like that. And of course, everybody thinks, oh my God, it's the virus. But it is a download so amazingly immense that your body is going to take a while to incorporate it and to embrace it and absorb it, and then make it your own, so that this is a time frame where you may find you either can't sleep or you sleep too much, one or the other. It's not halfway. And I know that I have found that I only need, maybe 3 hours of sleep. I just can't.
Wow.
I can't stay in bed any longer than that. I get up and I get back to work on stuff, and whether it's decluttering my house or cleaning my house, and trust me, it's not cleaning my house, but doing laundry, or I'm not, my way of cleaning my house is to get a good cleaning lady. But because I'm packing to move and stuff like that, and there's so much going on, and there's channeled stuff coming through that is just unbelievable, and I have to get up and write, because it's very much like if you were giving a reading to somebody and you get something, you have to give it, or nothing else comes. So it's a matter of things are backing up. There's so much material. I have to sit and write a whole bunch in order to be able to take a breather and get to do something else. And everybody is experiencing this in their own way.
Yes.
But this is a time where all sorts of cool things are happening. And if you're thinking about planting a garden, for gosh sakes, get the ground ready, or get pots ready, or do whatever. Everybody delivers these days, so you can get stuff delivered to you. But it's a time to let your creativity fuel the spiritual accumulation that is going on inside of you. And the more creative you are, the more easily all of this stuff works. So, paint your house, write music, learn a language. Just do anything that is of a creative nature, because that's what fuels the spiritual journey. And you have lots of opportunities these days because everybody's stuck at home.
And, you know, I feel that when you get to a certain point of clarity on the Grail path, for just one way to describe it, your internal GPS really rises up, just like your pineal gland, right? That psychic eye and that internal compass is very, very strong. And I believe that we will need that in the coming time to help shield us against all the misinformation and fear that is being thrown out there at this time, to distract people, to bring them down, you know, whatever it all is. It's complicated. It's never just one thing. But I'd like to share with you something that happened. When we talked, Barbara, this hadn't happened, and I'd like to give you the update on Michael and what he has now shown me. I think you'll find this interesting, and I'd really like your feedback on it if you can.
Sure.
Okay. So when everything was exploding with this virus, you were saying a lot of insights and downloads are coming in, and so the channeling is profuse. I mean, it's happening. So that was happening to me one week, and a lot of people were sending me different videos. Please look at this. What do you think? So on and so forth. And so my head was a bit full. And when I couldn't take anymore, I went into my living room, dimmed the lights, got really quiet, went into a meditative state, and asked the spirit of Mary Magdalene and also of Michael, Archangel Michael, to come to me and give me further clarity because I was a bit confused. And so Magdalene came in, and most of what she said I can't recall at the moment, but one sentence that struck me was she talked about a breach in protocol. And I wasn't even sure what that meant, but it felt galactic. So I'm like, okay, whatever. And then Michael came in, and because I was just begging him, you showed me the coronavirus. Please show me what's happening. And so he came in finally, and it was very sparse, even more sparse than the dream. And he said, look up. And when I looked up into the night sky, as I looked further up, I could see a rain coming down on Earth. But I knew it was artificial rain because the raindrops were about 4 inches long, a quarter of an inch wide. They had no light to them. They were tannish brownish, and they were artificial. I just knew. My GPS said that's artificial stuff. And so I'm thinking, well, what does this mean? I couldn't figure out the coronavirus one. Everybody's infected. And Michael said to me, look up further. And when I did, I saw a satellite in the sky, in the night sky, and that was it. That was it. So I found some information that I'm going to share about that came this past week. It's just a paragraph or two about satellites. But did you get any hits on that intuitively?
I would say that we're getting a lot of, intuitively, what I would say is that we're getting a lot of information rained down upon us. And it would seem to me, because of the color, that if it was the spiritual information, it would have been crystal clear. So
right.
We possibly are being flooded with information to confuse us, so that we don't see what the real truth is. And I don't know what the real truth is, but it's sort of like
good.
porn. The Supreme Court judge said, they were talking about porn, and somebody asked him to describe it. He said, I can't describe it, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing here. To me, the truth, the light, is crystal clear and sparkles. And if what you're seeing raining down upon you and around you is murky, then I would say there's material there you're being flooded with material that is meant to diverge your focus into a direction that's, to someone else's benefit and not your own.
Well, I think that's really good. and I'd like to share the information that I found that adds meat to the bones there, but I like that. So this is what I found, and this is, I think, also part of it. And I can't say I have it like all figured out, but this is what came across my desk, if you will. What will 42,000 satellites do to the Earth? SpaceX, which currently has about 400 low Earth orbiting satellites, has obtained permission to put 42,000 satellites into orbit in order to provide the whole world with 5G coverage. So SpaceX is moving from 400 low Earth orbiting satellites to 42,000. I mean, that's just an incredible difference, 400 to 42,000. SpaceX has about 400 satellites up. That was the number Elon Musk wanted to start testing the network. That could turn on at any time. So those of us that out there who are electrosensitive are paying attention and reading the news on that. Amazon, Facebook, and companies in the UK and Canada also have petitions to put up satellites. So it's not just SpaceX, but SpaceX is looking at doing 42,000 satellites. They just got approved by the government for 1 million antennas on the ground to work with the satellites. That is what I'm much more concerned about than the stuff beaming down from above, because they're closer. I think a lot of people are very concerned. I almost see this apocalyptic look on people's faces when we talk about the Starlink and the satellites, like we're not going to be protected. It's just going to be everywhere. And it goes on and it talks about this situation. But like I was saying, the 1 million antennas on the ground, that's what I'm much more concerned about. And then the devices that we and our neighbors have, these are concerning. If you have a metal roof, that's going to protect you somewhat from a lot of the different frequencies that are beaming down. I'm much more concerned about the stuff that's way closer to us. And so it goes on and on. There's a lot about the history of EMF and how it plays into our immune system, how it lowers it. So it's not just 5G. It's the history of this kind of frequency. So as you picked up in the vision that Michael gave me, what he was saying to pay attention to was the artificial frequency raining down on us, and that's why I think it's so critically important at this time for people to shift into the right brain more and the intuitive skill set to learn how to discern and know what to do to shield or protect themselves going forward.
I've often said that I believe that science fiction, whether it's books or movies or television shows, are meant to put out there information to kind of make us comfortable with things that are actually coming. And a long time ago, there was a series. It wasn't a series. I think it was more than one movie. But it was the premise of it was they constructed a shield around the world that was meant. They said it was meant to protect the earth. But what it did was it enslaved the populace. And
oh my God!
Did you see that movie?
No, my brother was, because I shared this with him yesterday, and he didn't have the detail that you did, but he said it was a science fiction movie, and yeah. Oh my God! Do you remember the name of it?
No. But it was and the guy that invented it, after he invented it, he realized that it was wrong, because what it did was it didn't protect us from outside forces. It enslaved us in this sphere, and when they at the end of the movie, they of course destroyed the shield, and when they did, fresh air came in, and stars were out again, and we were one with the universe. And what you're talking about is exactly the same thing. I can't remember the name of the movie. Somebody out there is, watch. I'll get 40 million emails tomorrow with the name of the movie. But
you got to let me know because I've got to watch it. I'm telling you, that was the vision. And then the information came. My brother said it. You said it. I think there's just something there to be gleaned, something there to be understood. Yeah.
I think
good.
It's not meant to protect or help. It's meant to control. And I am very much against the 5G, but I can't do anything about it. But to be aware that it's not really out there to help. It's out there to control.
Okay.
So
that feels right.
Yeah, a little bit scary. And it's the population that's on the Earth plane today was on the Earth plane before the last mass destruction. Was on the Earth plane, has been on the Earth plane every time a major event, major event took place. So we've been through it before. We may not remember it, but our spirit does. And, we are the survivors of those times. And we'll be a survivor here, too. It's going to be sticky. I'm not going to lie, but I meant earlier when I said we're in labor here, and what we come out with at the end of this whole process, and it could take a couple of years, we're going to have a better world, I truly believe.
I do too. But I'm as all this settles in, what I'm trying to do and what I will teach in the future as well, and we're working on a library right now connected to my website that will actually help people with these techniques, and yes, we will meet in person again as well, to sustain the next 2 or 3 years. Like, this isn't when it's over and we could all maybe start to move about the end of May. It's not over. It's just it will go into another phase, and so not to fear it. And I really like what you said. I believe that we are the ones that come at the shift of the ages. And we've been through this before. This is kind of what we all for so long have been calling ascension. This is it. This is it. It's this shift, into another age and another time. And you're right. We have been here before. We've survived it. We've been through it, and that's why we're here again now. So I guess that's a good way to sum up everything. Is that we have seen this before, and I don't know if I even said this because I just got the news just before the show, but did I mention that my 90-year-old aunt got the COVID virus?
Yeah, and we had to kind of jump when the show was going to start. You said that she was okay.
Yeah, and so because I couldn't connect with her in any physical way, there she was with her fever in Bridgeport Hospital and on oxygen, and it didn't look good. She was 90 years old, and a lot of people started to pray for her, and I went in and connected with her soul and talked with her about was she ready to leave or was she going to stay? And I think she's going to stay, and I'm so thrilled because I know her soul has been through this before too, and I didn't recognize it until now because she's the only surviving aunt on both sides of the family. And now I'm recognizing that part of her that is the old soul that we've connected to later in life as friends, as women, instead of, she's my aunt, I grew up with her, I'm her niece, we're very close, but there's something there about the old soul in this whole process that I think is getting activated, and I think she's actually choosing to stay as well because she holds a piece of that light of remembering how to get through this. So we talked about it just before we went on air, you're right, and it took all this time for me to come full circle and realize that she's been here before and done this too.
Yeah, I think it was Shield.
That just blows my mind. Sorry, but it's like you make a connection and get a download in real time, and I'm just making that connection right now after knowing her my entire life. So, mind blown. Mind blown.
That is so cool. I think the title of the movie had something to do with Shield.
Okay.
Something about a shield, but yeah, people help me out there. This is going to keep me up. I'm going to be up all night looking for this darn movie. But I will find it and I will send it to you because it really is amazing. We're down to the last couple minutes, so you want to kind of give out your information and tell people how to get a hold of you and what courses you're going to be running and stuff like that?
Sure. The best way to get in touch with me is to use the hub of my website, Gloria-Amendola.com. There's an email on there. I'm really good about email. If you write to me, I will get back to you. holygrailmary@gmail is that email. I'm also on Facebook and fairly active, so you can always send me a friend request that way. What we're doing with this material is working through initiation, and some of it will be in person and on the ground in different places in the United States and abroad, but there'll be sources of information and a way in which to work this process. With the trilogy being released, even just with rereading the first volume, I realized that Magdalene has actually given instructions on how to clear the emotional body and go into those well of memories, both good and bad, both enlightening and traumatic. And so that's a process we're going to be working with people to help them get through this next 2-3 years. So best way to get in touch is email via my website or on Facebook, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
I'm just looking forward to working with people in this way because a lot of people are really open now, and they're really eager to figure this out for themselves.
Absolutely. And we're talking about you coming on once a month and doing a show on what's going on and whatever material you want to share. So we'll tell everybody to keep your eyes out. It'll probably be a Wednesday show, but I think once a month or whatever day works for you. I mean, I don't really care. Mark is Tuesday, but I think it's time to be putting a spiritual show out there once a month to help people understand what's going on.
I'm ready. I'm game.
And to hopefully, give them tools to apply to their own lives so that they can, the tools are free, but you got to teach yourself. So it's really kind of cool stuff.
Yep.
But it has been a pleasure having you on again, and I look forward to, figuring out what we're going to do next month and getting that all programmed too. So thank you so much for being here and sharing all your information with us. It's been, an absolute pleasure talking to you as always.
Oh, thanks, Barbara. It really was nice talking with you as well and sharing this with the audience. It went by pretty quickly.
It did, absolutely. And I want to thank everybody out there for listening. We really appreciate your spending your time with us. And I know it's a very precious commodity time, and that you take the time to share and to listen and to be with us. We greatly appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to having Gloria on next month and, every month thereafter to have a moment of spiritual enlightenment that we can share our wisdoms with you and, what works for you, make it your own, and what doesn't, walk on to the next glimmer. So thanks for being with us. We greatly appreciate it. Check us out tomorrow night. Mark has a great show for there. And we'll talk to you again soon. Good night. Stay well. And as they say on TV, we'll get through this together. Good night now.